Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Last week I talked about a course that I teach called Managing Transition. It's from a guy named William Bridges. Bridges wrote a book in the 90s called Transitions. He then wrote a book called Managing Transition. In that book, he talks about something really important. He says that change is guaranteed, but transition is not. And so part of when it comes to transitions, he would say transition is the mental reality shift that needs to occur. It's like change is physical. Change happens when we can't go outside, when we lose a loved one, when we lose a job, when we go from having one opportunity to another. Change is physical. Okay. You have very little control over change. Some change we can create, but a lot of change we have no power over. So change is this whole idea of the outside world. But transition is actually mental. Transition is the mental reality. And so mental. And he says that change is not the problem. The actual problem is that mentally we struggle to shift from embracing one reality to letting go and embracing another. And so we have to figure out ways to go, how do I let go of one thing and embrace a new thing? Because you have very little control over the majority of change in the world. What you can control is the mental process. And so Bridges talks a lot about we struggle with this. We struggle with letting go of things. And so he lays out a 3-beat model of how you actually not how you can go through it. You can in some ways, but he wants to kind of lay out the guideposts. Like these are the things you can expect when it comes to managing transition, or at the very least experiencing change. And so what I want to do is I want to hit up 3 beats of this, and then I'm going to frame out the beat that we're kind of all in right now. And so here is a timeline. On the far side is going to be the place we're kind of all at right now. This is the first piece. And then the end is, this is the old reality, this is the new reality. Now, when a change occurs, a lot of us will start into, it's okay. And so think about right now we're dealing with negative change. Like the world has changed in ways we weren't ready for. But a lot of times we're talking about positive change. Or change that someone wants us to believe is positive. They reorganize, they change things, they start new departments, they close one division and open a new one. Most people, in an effort to manage the transitional process in their head, to navigate the change, they will talk about, don't worry, tomorrow's going to be okay. It's going to be great. And in fact, you're hearing a lot of people, even myself sometimes right now, talking about, it's all right, down the road, these are the things that are happening. But Bridges would say that the new beginning, that the things that are possible long term, how we're all going to come out of this, that is actually not the first stage of mental transition. Some will jump right to the next thing and go, okay, the past is gone, next. How do we just deal? Bridges would say that if you're focused on the new beginning, then you're actually focused on the last stage of transition, not the first. So the final stage is the new beginning. Okay. Bridges would say the first stage of transition is actually the end. The end. This, however, is not where most people like to start. When it comes to mentally shifting our world, we can't focus on how it's going to be okay or deny that it occurs. We have to actually start with the end. But human beings hate endings. Endings represent death. Human beings have a really difficult concept of time, right? We don't like the fact that we have zero control over time. And so when it comes to managing our lives, things that are good should never end. Lives that are great shouldn't finish. We shouldn't lose people and things and situations. You want the party to never end. We want the affirmation to never end. We hate the end. But Bridges would say that the only way you can mentally deal with change is to be able to start with endings. And so the first phase is the end. Now, he would say to do this phase well, one of the elements we need to embrace is this idea of the wake and funeral. A wake and a funeral. A wake, when someone dies, is a celebration. It's all the things that matter. Is that all the different pieces that were important. How do we celebrate? How do we call out the things that were good, the things that matter to us. So a wake is a celebration of life. A funeral is the mourning. It's the grief. It's the pain. All the things that you're going to miss. The sadness. All the emotion. Because in endings, no matter how great a change is or how bad it is, there is both positive and negative. We typically will focus on the negatives, but the reality is that there's actually positives. There's things to be celebrated. There's things that even in the ending are a good thing. Wow, I've ended this. And so right now, if you think about the situation everyone's in, endings are the part that we're avoiding a lot of times, right? As we think about our world right now, we are a lot more aware of how fragile life is right now. We're a lot more aware of how little we have actual control. Our ideas about what we had power over and what we didn't, going away. How interdependent we are, our thought of being able to be independent and isolated, that's actually ending. So there's all kinds of things that are ending right now, but in some ways, there's also good endings. We are actually finding kindness. We are ending shame. We're ending some of our assumptions. We're ending a whole bunch of pieces. But we can't mentally shift into this new reality until we embrace the end. How do you process endings? You need to grieve. You need to feel all the emotions. You need to feel frustration. But also at the same time go, you know what? I'm going to take this moment to end some things that this moment allows me and gives me permission to end. I'm going to stop being so self-centered. I'm going to start thinking more about savings and being less interested in appearance and all whatever. Fill this ending not only with things outside your control, but things that are within your control. The wake and the funeral. So basically grief. If you want to really focus in, grief is key in this season. Are you able to grieve? So change occurs. Some of us, we're now at 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending upon what state you're in. You're just barely getting to the point of grief. Like for me, I'm suddenly realizing that I can't go to the movies. I've been so busy, haven't thought about it. But for me, the things I usually do to take care of myself, the travel, film, getting able to go hang out with my friends, like I'm just getting to the point where I'm starting to realize, wait, it could be June, it could be July before some of that happens again. That is me in denial. 7 stages of grief. There's some great stuff out there right now. If you look at that, you are actually in those stages. How do you embrace the fact that the world, no matter what comes out the other end, no matter how we all rally and the world comes together and it all ends up being okay, it's never going to be what it was. There's an ending that has occurred. Don't deny the ending. Start with the end. But great. Maybe you're processing well. You've embraced the struggle. You've embraced the ending. And you think, cool, I'm ready for the new beginning. Actually, no. After the end comes the uncertain middle. Uncertain middle. I scribbled, don't mind me. The uncertain middle. Where you're not where you were, but you're not where you're going. And so this is going to be the majority of our summer. This is going to be, and this is, by the way, this model's happening constantly on all kinds of things. From how we see our present to how we see our own reality, our families, our jobs, our careers, our country. And so this is going to keep happening. The end, the uncertain middle, the new beginning. We typically, even after this is over and they stop doing shelter in place orders, it's not going to be suddenly, let's go back to the way it was. Coronavirus is here. It's in the world. It's going to exist for a while. The uncertain middle here is this piece where we can step in and go, I'm not where I was, but I'm not where I'm going. Well, like a boat, this is like a lake almost, with one end and then the other. When we get to that middle, we're too far from each shore to be able to swim it. But what happens is people hate the uncertainty. We really hate endings. We hate grief, but we don't like uncertainty either. And so people think that we can double down and dive into this uncertainty and just paddle harder, work harder, and we'll get to that new beginning. Or we'll go backwards. How do we reclaim yesterday? Let's make it great again. Let's do what we have to do. Let's go backwards. Well, uncertain middle, here in the center, you can't paddle faster. And we're going to be here over most of the summer probably. And probably into the fall in a lot of ways. Maybe longer. The best thing you can do in the uncertain middle is stay afloat. You tread water. If you're on a boat that capsizes, you don't try to swim to a shore. You try to stay with the boat and stay afloat. Kindness, being intentional, being clear about what our priorities are. Stay afloat. Do what you can. Stop worrying about how things were, how things are going to be. Stay afloat. Tread water. Get good at it. That's the uncertain middle. Don't paddle too hard. Be nice to each other, be nice to yourself. Eventually, if you can stay afloat when it comes to dealing with change, there are currents in the world. And you'll wake up and realize the brains are very adaptable. Part of the human genius is the ability to adapt. You will find that there's currents that are suddenly creating patterns in our life. And without even realizing it, you will have been on the shore of the new beginning and not realize it. You'll actually look back. As soon as you do realize that you've made peace with this new reality, start to kind of set new patterns. This is where you want to create patterns for yourself. But here's the deal. If you're pushing yourself to that and you're sure that you're clear of the uncertain middle, you're not. If you think you know where you're at, typically you see it after the fact. And so embrace in the season of the end, the uncertain middle, the new beginning, that you don't always know. But this process by which are you letting things end? People are often afraid of grief and mourning. I'm going to do StrengthsFinder themes, each domain, around these 3 areas. Because what you're going to find is, based on your dominant StrengthsFinder domain, it impacts how you do this process, how you mentally go through the transition. Because some of us, like themes, let's say, of relationship, you actually do the end pretty well because you feel the pain of it right away. Influencing, strategic, we try to fight, especially executing themes, I would say, executing domain, you're more likely to go, well, I can just fight my way through it. I can take action. I can get things done, and that'll get me through. So the uncertain middle is really going to be hard for you. And also probably the end. When it comes to strategic thinking, it depends on whether or not you've internalized the information. It depends on how you're taking the data in. Influencing, you guys are going to think you can jump right past the end and go to the uncertain middle. It's likely to bite you later. I'm going to do each domain one by one and kind of lay that out and give you some thoughts on how your StrengthsFinder domain impacts the end, the uncertain middle, and the new beginning. Because this, folks, is going to be a long mental transition. Change has occurred. Now we need to find ways to mentally transition ourselves from one reality to another. Where are you today? Are you at the uncertain middle? Are you embracing the end? If the end is where we're going to start with feelings. Start keeping track of what you're feeling, and if you're logical, what are you thinking? Capture all of that. First tip for all this is start keeping track. What am I feeling? What's my current reality? And find a way to express it. That's the surest way to step into the end. But this is based on a book. If you want to pick it up, The Way of Transition is the personal version. It's an older book, but there's so much truth in it. But the main book was called Transitions by a guy named William Bridges. Hey, hope this gives you something to think about. The end, the uncertain middle, the new beginning. Where are you today? If you have questions, comments, please shoot them my way. I'd love to respond. Also, if this is helpful, the coolest thing you can do is share with a friend. Creating all this to help people, the more people you share this with, the more impactful it is. Hey, thanks guys. Stay safe out there. Have a great Saturday.